right, welcome back. Exactly 8:30, and of course, like I promised, we're switching conversation to talk about space. And I know some of us are very fascinated about the space, so you will love this conversation. All right, and of course, as we all know, the space industry is currently among the fastest growing industries in the world, creating immense opportunities and innovations in technology, business, services, and research, as well as development. And of course, as a developing country, Kenya is keen to tap into this potential. Kenya deployed its first home-designed satellite in the orbit in 2018 from Japan's space agency. So just exactly how important is it that, and of course, what more opportunities can Kenya tap into the outer space technology? Well, let's find out. And of course, to help us with that conversation, we have Charles Mwangi, who's Acting Director, Space Sectors and Technology Development. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, Winnie. Glad to be here. Thank you for having us here.
All right, karibu sana. And like I said, you know, most of us are very fascinated about the space and the orbit, and it's just an interesting space to be fascinated about. But just help us understand, you know, the whole aspect of this space and why important, you know, is the conversation today.
Thank you, Winnie. Space is quite important in our daily lives, and when you look at space, I know the most common knowledge about space is when you're dealing with satellites and the rockets and the launch, and you've heard of SpaceX.
Yeah.
But when we look at space from two segments. There's what you call the upstream segment, and there's also what you call the downstream segment. The upstream segment is what I alluded to, where you're dealing with satellites, you're dealing with launch vehicles. But then there is a very important element which is found in the downstream, what you use the satellites for. And there are quite a number of applications that you find in that space. You're talking about agriculture, you're talking about navigation. If you're using Google Maps, there is a satellite that is used for that. You're talking about monitoring our natural resources, among many other applications. And that is the most important element that people need to understand, the value that space technology do provide to address the societal needs.
Okay, and I like what you're saying, address the societal needs, because I think when we think about the space, we just think, this is like an out-of-world sort of experience. It's just for different, it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with us, mostly of the Western world, where we see a lot of launch and all those things. But like you said, it's important, right, to all of us and in all these different sectors for us, right? So then Kenya Space Agency, right, this is where you come in. So can we just understand your mandate, on the same, and then of course we'll trickle down into, the different aspects of this space that we need to tap into.
Maybe Winnie, I can go back a bit into the history that led to the establishment of the Kenya Space Agency.
Okay.
And that takes us back to 1964, just when we were getting independence. We were approached by the Italian government to set up what is called the San Marco Center then. The intention was to use our location to launch, because again there are particular advantages of having being near the equator, as well as having an east coast, because when you're launching at the equator, you make savings in terms of the fuel, and fuel do constitute quite a huge amount of the payload. When you're looking at the rocket, usually the payload or what is being sent to space is usually like 10%, and the other component provide essentially the fuel component. Yeah. So if you have reduced component of fuel, then you're also able to carry a bigger instrument into space. And that is why the Italians reached out to us to use our location. Okay. And that center was established in Malindi, and there are quite a number of launches. And I know most Kenyans don't know that we have previously launched from Kenya, but that was between 1967 and 1988.
A while
yes.
Back, yeah.
So we had 20 launches from there. 9 satellites were launched from there, and the other ones were sounding rockets. And then over time, government. That time there was no agency, so there was no body that was there was no government body that was there to liaise or link with the Italian government. And after many years, 1993, the cabinet decided that there was need to establish a body, and that led to the establishment of what we then call the National Space Secretariat, which was supposed to be the precursor of the Kenya Space Agency. That was in 2009.
Okay.
And then in 2017, we had now the Kenya Space Agency being established with the mandate to promote, coordinate, and regulate space activities, because again, there are different facets of the space sector that are important for the economy that needed to be coordinated in a particular way, and we'll get to that later on. And it's the basis of these elements that needed to be coordinated that led to the establishment of the Kenya Space Agency, because now having a space agency, I know most of you would know NASA in the US or JAXA in Japan, the European Space Agency and the other space agencies in Europe. We have a body that is able to engage with those players to try and see how much benefit you're able to get from the collaboration from such engagement. So essentially the role of the Kenya Space Agency is to act as a link for the country with those agencies, as well as try and catalyze and promote the utilization of those technologies to address the societal needs that I had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, all right. And of course, in 2018, like you said, we launched, our first cube. And of course, I'm happy that you have here with you. Just tell us a little bit about that moment and what that meant for us as a country and the Kenya Space Agency as well.
So, Winnie, that was an exciting moment for Kenya.
Yeah.
And I hope you don't get disappointed by saying this is what was launched. And I'll get to the specifics of this. So a CubeSat is a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter satellite, or we call them nanosatellite. And this is what was launched from the International Space Station with support from the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs and JAXA. Of course, they were delivered to the International Space Station using SpaceX rocket. So why that was important is because Kenya then, in 11th May 2018, we became a spacefaring country, courtesy of this device that you would assume.
Yes.
Why it is also, in terms of technology, it might look very small, but just to give you an indication of how fast objects move in space or satellites move in space, you're talking about speeds of 7 to 8 kilometers per second.
Yeah.
So meaning that if you're going to Mombasa, which is about 400 kilometers.
Away from here,
if you're moving at a speed of 8 kilometers per second, you'll be in Mombasa in about, say, 50 seconds.
Yeah.
In 50 seconds. So that is the speed by which devices move or satellites move in space.
In space, yeah.
Where this device was, or the CubeSat was launched from the International Space Station, it's a size, they say it's the size of a football field. So you can, you can see that massive infrastructure moving in space at that particular speed. And then also because it goes around the Earth, so it is not static. Maybe that also is the other clarification.
Yeah.
So you have the Earth, and then the satellite go round and round. And then the Earth is also going round. So the only time that you're able to get the data from this satellite is when there is the alignment between the what we call the orbit and the ground track, essentially where Kenya, now this satellite will be on top of Kenya. And if you have your antenna there, then you're able to receive that data. That window is also usually very short.
Yes.
And there is always, for those who are in the IT space, there is the bit where you call it handshaking, where you have to first send the initial data to initiate communication, and then you have to send the data. Again, remember in space there is no cellular network. There is no Safaricom, there is no telecom. So meaning that you have to send that data somehow. And normally, like for these ones we were using, for the one that was launched was using amateur frequencies, meaning that the speed is very slow. You are sending an image. it takes quite a bit of time, and the technology, it was more of a technology demonstration and to again catalyze that, and we were excited to see that that elicited quite a bit of interest within the sector, and we're hoping to build on this momentum.
Okay, all right. And of course, this is very essential. And of course, you talked about some of these areas in just a moment, but just to paint that picture for Kenyans to understand how important this is, and especially when it comes to climate change. We have an aspect of, especially agriculture, very, very important, in the same defense, which is also very, very key, as far as that is concerned. So just paint that picture for Kenyans, to really understand that.
Good. So Winnie, what happens is these satellites, and I'm using this as an example, they're much bigger ones in space. So as they go around the Earth, one of the functions is they can take images, and maybe I can just share a bit of an overview. So we have a number of types of satellites. So we have what we call the weather satellites. The weather satellites are used to monitor the weather and climate, and we also have the ones that we call the communication satellite, the ones that we use for satellite communication, or DSTV for those who use satellite signals. Those are usually in an area that what we call the geostationary orbit, and they appear to be fixed because the way they are made, or the location where they are located, which is about 36,000 kilometers away, from surface, and they are usually on the equatorial belt. So as the Earth moves around, they move with the same speed with the Earth. So they're able to appear like they're static, and that is why you don't move your dish, the DSTV dish, it stays static. Although they are moving, so they move in the same speed, and that is why they are located in about 36,000 kilometers. Much lower, we have what we call the low and middle Earth orbit. In the low Earth orbit, that is where we have most of the satellites that are known. There is what we call the Earth observation satellite, and I now get to the point where we look at the applications. Before we look at that, then we also have another category we call the navigation satellites, and the likes of GPS. Or the ones that are from other companies like GLONASS. There is also the Beidou constellation. So those help in the navigation. And for you, I know currently we use a lot of Google Maps. Yes. If those satellites were put off, or they were turned off, given that we have gotten used to them, then we would have serious challenges on that, because we will not be able to navigate as easily as we have gotten accustomed to. On the application side, you mentioned agriculture. So for the Earth observation, most of them would have a camera. It might not be possible to see these ones, but even this one had a camera. For taking the images. So as they go around, they take the image of that particular surface.
And then send the data.
So once you have, it's more like taking a selfie. It's we might call the satellites to be our selfie phones. So once you have the images, then you're able to analyze them, and we do what we call the classification of the image. And then you're able to do what we call the land use land cover maps. So the land use land cover maps are the ones that tells you this place is a forest, this place is an cropland, this place is a desert. And using that data, we're able to also, like if it was for agriculture, we're able to, if we have an area, we're able to demarcate the areas that are under crop. We're even able to get to the level where we're able to say, this is maize, this is beans, this is wheat. And then using that, if, for example, we have, we know the yield outputs for, say, Kitale for maize. If 1 acre, you're able to get, say, 100 bags. If you have 100 acres, then you're able to project and say you potentially be able to get
produce this much yield.
That much yield. And also if it's forest, again, I know we had there's the latest forest cover statistics that we're given. We're able to map out where the forests are, and based on the image, because when you see green in an image, and you're able to know, depending on the shades of green. if you have disasters like floods, then you're also able to use the same images to know the areas that are inundated.
Yeah.
And then be able, if it's offering assistance, then you're able to direct that assistance to, to direct the agencies that need to provide that assistance to the areas that need that support.
That support. I like that. And of course, all this then contribute in one way or the other to national development, right? And of course, to this we have, you know, the Kenya Space Expo, which is coming up. You know, the Kenya Space Expo and Conference, you know, which is 2022. And of course, the theme is all about leveraging space capabilities for national development. And of course, this will be happening from the 15th to 17th of June, right, this month. So tell us a little bit about the Expo and why it is important and how Kenya then can, you know, leverage on all these opportunities just to make sure that we're well positioned, especially when it comes to national development.
Thank you, Winnie. You had asked the question in terms of the applications and how do we as Kenya benefit from space? The reason why you're having the Kenya Space Expo and Conference 2022 is to try and answer that question, because it is widely known that the space sector or the industry requires huge investments from government. And it is important because essentially what we invest is coming from the taxpayers. It is important for the citizenry to understand why we are investing in the technologies that we are investing. And the reason why we have the Expo is to create that platform where everyone is able to understand why we need space and the technologies, how the space technologies are able to address the needs of our society. And more importantly, again, we need to, again, in the developed countries, the space sector contribute immensely to the economy or to the GDP. And as a spacefaring or as an emerging spacefaring country, we want to see how best can we tap into that resource to make it more meaningful for people to invest in that sector. Because again, we are seeing a shift in terms of investment from the private sector. And we want to bring all these players together so that we're able to have that conversation, we're able to establish those linkages, and also be able to showcase some of the activities that are happening within the sector. So we are excited to have that event. And we're also inviting the Kenyans to visit us. We'll be at the Sarit Center Expo from the 15th to the 17th, and it's open. There is registration cost is waived for this particular event, and we look forward to finding more Kenyans visiting us during that time.
Yeah, and of course the tickets are available as well. We'll talk about the tickets in just a moment. But then again, so what are you looking for, especially when it comes to, you know, the expectations from this expo, and also learning from what we learned in 2017 and even in the future, you know, as well. So your expectations from the expo.
So in 2020, we had what we call the Stakeholder Workshop, and that was a smaller, smaller grouping. And the reason why we made it a bit small was to better understand the expectations of our stakeholders on what roles the Kenya Space Agency should play. We did have that conversation, and now we have expanded this conversation to a bigger audience. We have much more participation from also the private sector as well. And we've also invited some international speakers to try and give us some ideas. So the reason why you're having that is to, one, like I indicated, a showcase. We'll have exhibition that will be showcasing some of the innovations or some of the activities some of the stakeholders are having within the country. More importantly, also will be the conference section, where we will have discussions on, say, for example, what is the role of the space sector within our ecosystem, the space ecosystem. How best can we catalyze innovation and startups? Because again, that is the other dimension that we're looking at. How do we grow this sector to create jobs and also to be able to deliver on the needs? And then we'll also have discussions in terms of, we have 3 streams. So we'll be looking at Earth observation. So here we'll be looking at the application side. There's also the space engineering bit, where we talk about manufacturing satellites, how we can launch again. Currently, we are not launching from Kenya. How can we have more activities around there, around launch? And that is under space engineering. And then we also have a component called space science and astronomy. And sometimes people ask, why do we need to look out there? Because again, astronomy and space science is essentially looking at the galaxies, the black holes and like. But again, that information is equally important because it also helps us understand, like for example, if you're to launch in space, you need information on the space weather, because again, the environment where those instrument will operate will be in that particular element. So we're looking at those dynamics, and so that again people are able to, by coming to the conference, you get a broader view and understanding of the sector and try and see how best can we as a country leverage on that. And also for the young people, what are the opportunities? Where is the technology headed towards so that we can leverage on that potential that is here for the space sector?
Okay. And of course, there's a lot of conversations about space tourism, which again, I find it very fascinating. I'm being ambitious, okay? So in terms of Kenya, also tapping into the same, because we're also big in tourism, right? As a country as it is. So like in future, again, tapping into those opportunities, where would you say we're at?
I would say we are at the very beginning.
Okay.
And the conversation is, again, why we're having the expo to try and see what do Kenyans expect from us? And because again, that forms the basis of our strategies, because if the Kenyans tell us we want to go to space, then we put steps, we put steps together. But more importantly, I mentioned the possibility of launch again from Kenya, because again, I mentioned we have geographical advantage because we are at the equator, we have an east coast, and that is one of the conversations that we have. Because if you are to have a spaceport within the country, then it would also be easier for us to access space. And usually space exploration, the one that you're referring to is what you call the suborbital flights, where you fly and then come back. You don't go around the Earth. And if you had a spaceport, those realities become possibilities. And by having those conversations and those opportunities, then we also explore how we would be able to realize that based on the needs of the Kenyans.
Okay, and of course, this also again ties to the Vision 2030. Right as far as Kenya is concerned, as well as the Big Four, initiatives. So just tell us a little bit about the same.
So. Space does not operate in isolation. We say space is more of space technology is more of an enabler. And earlier I mentioned agriculture, which is one of the Big Four agenda discussion. There is also the component of health as well. Which again, you could use satellite technology to, say for example, if you wanted to map out the areas that would be affected by malaria, you would be able to do what we call the hazard maps. And also monitor that as well. You can also monitor the conditions that are good for, or favorable for malaria or for mosquitoes to thrive. So you can use space technology to address such issues. There's also the element of manufacturing, and I mentioned us trying to get the space engineering bit up and going. If you are to have a launch facility, then you would have the opportunity of having what we might call the integration center, because most of the parts, most of the rocket parts come as individual bits, and then you would need to combine them together into one unit. And again, the other element that you're looking at, and we've been trying to get into, is using research grants. We have currently a number that are ongoing to try and catalyze that discussion in terms of are we able to manufacture and some of these components, and that is one of the conversations that would also be happening at the Expo, because again we have heritage or examples from countries like South Africa, which is an African country that has been able to develop companies around the subsystems, the subsystems of the main satellite system. So again, we're looking at tapping on that, and again, as space as an enabler, we see that contributing also to the Vision 2030 and addressing also the sustainable development goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And the same, of course, again, listening to you, we cannot really underscore the importance of of space, right? So, like we said, of course, the conference will be happening from 15th to 17th of June at Secretariat Center. And of course, like you said, it's open for the public. So we have different categories as far as the passes are concerned, right? Like 1 day pass is around, what, 1,000 shillings?
No,
No? Okay.
it's free. It's free.
It?
It's free.
Okay, all right, then we all get to go.
Yeah, because again, we said the most important bit is to help Kenyans understand why we are going to space and why do we have the Kenya Space Agency, and I know quite a number would be more informed now that we're saying there is a Kenya Space Agency, and to initiate that conversation. So it is free, and we are hoping that the Kenyans would take some time to come listen to the some of the sessions. They can look at the program from the Kenya Space Agency website and register also there. But the registration is free, of course. So
I'd like that.
No reason why not to come.
Absolutely. For those of us who are fascinated by the same, this is where you need to go, because, like we said, it affects all areas of our lives, from agriculture to health, development again in general, defense as well, which is pretty much important. So yes, you need to be there. Okay, so the Kenya Space Expo and Conference 2022, of course, the theme is all around leveraging space capabilities for national development, again, 15th to 17th of June this year. All right, so thank you very much, Charles, for coming by today and, of course, helping us understand, and especially the role of Kenya Space Agency, right? Hey, 10 seconds. When are we launching another CubeSat?
Maybe this time it will be much bigger. So we're working with a local company to launch possibly in the coming year, in January. So we hope to see that. And maybe just before I wind up, the last thing that I would want to say is we're also putting effort to promote STEM. We are calling it GeoSTEM because geography has been lost. We also want to have the young people to be fascinated, so that now they also start dreaming early about space, and also they potentially be the ones to get us there.
Absolutely. Why not? Why not? Charles Mwangi, Acting Director, Space Sectors and Technology Development. We say thank you very much for coming by today. All the very best at the expo as well. I'll come because I like that. Okay, I'll try come. Okay, and of course I hope that you also make your way there 15th to 17th. And of course that is where we mark the end of this conversation this morning right here on Your World. Thank you very much for staying with us. My name is Winnie Lubembe. On behalf of everybody who put together and ensured that the show, Your World, is a success, we say thank you, God bless, and enjoy the rest of your viewing. Goodbye.